Hello class, how are you today? I really hope that everything is okay at home with you and with your family, of course. In this opportunity, we will continue with Unit 1 and remember that it's called hygiene. But before we go to the contents of today's lesson, I want you to remember what we did previously. Do you remember? Yes, we talked about obligation. And we said that an obligation is an action that is necessary to do because it is part of our duty or responsibility. For example, hands must be washed before and after patient contact. This means that you cannot forget that action because you could be in danger or have an unpleasant consequence. In English, when we talk about obligation, we use the modal verbs. Do you remember that? And these modal verbs are verbs that give a sense to our speech. And we have different types according to the idea that we want to express. And in this case, we focus our idea on modal verbs of obligation. We said that we had must for rules and things that are really necessary to do. For example, we must follow procedures more carefully. We have to, and we will use it to talk about things that other people oblige us to do or responsibilities. For example, sorry, I have to go. I'm on my duty in 10 minutes. Mustn't, that represents a prohibition. For example, you mustn't forget to put gloves on. Also, don't have to, that is something not necessary to do. For example, you don't have to wash Mrs. Sarah's face. She can do it herself. Or need to say something is necessary to do. For example, we need to clean floors more often. We also checked the rule. How are we going to use these modal verbs? And we said that we need two elements, the modal verb and other verb in infinitive. For example, we must follow procedures. We have the modal verb and a verb in infinitive. Any verb. Sorry, I have to go. Have to, it's a modal verb, and go, the infinitive verb or verb in infinitive. We need to clean the floors. Again, need to is the modal verb, and clean is a verb in infinitive. So, you cannot use the modal verb alone. You have to use it with another verb, and this other verb goes in infinitive, right? Today we will continue with this idea because I know it's a bit complicated to understand. So remember, we have must. Must represent obligation. When you want to talk about obligations, you use must. Have to represents responsibilities, activities that are part of your duties because someone else has told you to do, because it is part of your job, for example, responsibilities. Need to represents necessity, something necessary to do, not an obligation, not a responsibility, a necessity. Don't have to represent something that is not necessary to do. All right, you can do it if you want, but it is not necessary. And mustn't represents prohibition. In this case, you have to avoid that action because you will have a punishment if you do. Okay? So these are the 5 modal verbs that we have checked so far. Must, obligation. Have to, responsibility. Need to, necessity. Don't have to, not necessary. And mustn't, prohibition. All right? All of these thinking about a nurse job. Now, please read these 5 sentences and identify what they represent. Which of these sentences represents an obligation? Which is a prohibition? Which is a necessity? Which is not necessary? And which is a responsibility? Think about the words used, the modal verb as well. Try to do it by yourself. Okay, let's go with the first one. You must respect the hygiene protocol. In this case, we have must, right? And we said that must represent obligation. Very good. Number 2, you have to be punctual. In this case, we have to. And have to represent responsibility. Excellent. Number 3, I need to buy a new apron. We have need to, so need to represents a necessity. Excellent. Number 4, we don't have to work together all the time. We have don't have to, and in this case, don't have to represent something that is not necessary to do. Very good. And number 5, you mustn't forget to clean your hands before and after patient's contact. We have mustn't, so it represents prohibition. You see? All of these 5 sentences talk about things that are part of your work, right? But the intention is different because they are using different modal verbs. In relation to the modal verb that we are using is the intention or the powerness of your words. It is not the same to say you must respect the hygiene protocol because that is an obligation, instead of saying you need to respect the hygiene protocol. In that case, it's a necessity, right? It changes the intention of the word, the powerness of your message. Remember that the verb is going to be in infinitive. Respect, be, buy, work, forget. Okay, they are in infinitive. You use the modal verb and the verb in infinitive. That is the end of this presentation. I really hope that this has clarified a little bit any of your doubts or questions that you may have. In this opportunity, I'm not going to give you extra activity because with the activity that we have done during the presentation is enough. If you have any questions in relation to the content or in relation to anything, You can write it to my email address whenever you want, okay? And that's it. Thank you very much for your attention. I send you a hug. Take care, stay at home, and see you around. Goodbye.